in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything I'm reflected in. You can see God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything I'm reflected in. You can see God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything I'm reflected in. You can see God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything. Some people open up their eyes to see the world they know outside. I can close my eyes and see all that and way beyond. When these trials of life come heavy and these obstacles get hard, feeling like I need some answers, I just go and talk to God. I just go and talk to God when I'm looking for guidance. Need more than sight, need vision, need direction when I'm blind. Then I start that conversation with that voice I hear inside me. And that conversation starts with a voice inside that sounds just like me. When I talk to God, you can see God in anything, your reflection. I can find God in anything. When I talk to God, you can see God in anything. When I talk to God, I find God in anything. When I talk to God, my daddy said don't ever assume, ask questions. It's ironic it was that advice that helped the song happen. It was also that advice that led me to my life's blessings. That same advice helped me make it through life's lessons. It was that advice that separates grown-ups away from children. That advice can be the difference from knowing or just believing. It was that advice that brought the gavel down on my decisions of breaking the mental chains of these man-created religions. This faith and belief, nonsense, the biggest scam ever. I hate to say it, I swear it's one hell of a mental illness. No other time. Why we do it with these religions? The fact that COVID's killing while all of these guys is missing. Peekaboos, guys playing games with you. I'ma just assume he ain't got no COVID miracles. Maybe he ran out after making the donkey talk. Or some stories about a guy walking on water tides. Simply a distraction to keep you away from you and to look outside for a God when the God is inside of you. When you close your eyes at night and pray to that voice you talking to. When you ready to face the truth, you realize that voice is you. You can see God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything I'm reflecting in. You can see God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything I'm reflecting in. You can see God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything I'm reflecting in. You can see God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything I'm reflecting in.
All right, family. All right, all right. Make sure I am stop sharing for a second. How y'all doing? How y'all doing? Good to see y'all. Been a day for me at work, but welcome back to another installment of When the Pastor Has Questions. For those that might be new, why do I even call the show that, and why did I start? There have been some people lately in some of the threads on Facebook, and I do apologize, and I want to for not being able to participate in all of the comments and things going on the Facebook thread. But y'all getting it in over there. You're having the conversation. That's what's important. That's what we need that to go down. People sharing the information. All of us have our different areas. And I mean that on both sides. I mean that on the believing side and the non-believing side. Myself, when it comes to why I do this, since there was a person that was saying some things about just reading and studying. Yeah, well, if you don't know me, once again, here's a little bit of my background real quick. What up, Chris? Man, Chris, I sure appreciate you, bro. But I'm gonna holler at you. We'll talk later, man. Hey, appreciate Chris supporting the channel and dropping knowledge and taking the time out to come on the channel. Like I said in the previous episode, this is really a topic for him because there were different things for those of us that have come out of religion. There were different things that got some of us. For some of us, it was a combination of things. The way I understand it, for Chris, that was a big thing. Peace, Joanne. Peace, fam. Good to see you too in the place. Back to what I was saying for those that are new, don't know me. My actual full name is Elisha Taylor Jr. Okay, so I call myself Eli. I went to a small junior college called Southwestern Christian College, where we basically studied the Bible. I actually have my degree somewhere back here behind me, but I think y'all can take me at my word for that, right? If you can accept some of y'all believers, if you can accept the word written by some unknown people 2,000 years ago, I mean, I got a degree in that. I did 2 years at that college. I left there, lived a little while in Atlanta. I was at Morehouse College. I had gotten away from religion for that smaller stint of time. Did some time in the military and military intelligence. Came back, graduated from FAMU with my bachelor's degree in criminal justice. All of this time, except for that period of time while I was at Morehouse, I I went to church, but I was done with the preaching thing. But when I got back home to Tallahassee, Florida, they encouraged me. I got back into church and worked heavily in the church. Me and some other friends there. To speed this up a little bit, in 2010, I became a full time minister of my own congregation, Daytona Beach, Florida. Church was called Westside Church of Christ. Did that for 3 years, had a lot of success in that. Moved to Jacksonville, Florida in 2013, and was able to uh, go into a church that was there, had been established for a while. We had some challenges, and at the end of things, ended up establishing my own congregation here in Jacksonville, Florida, back in 2016. Shout out to those people, still love them, still talk to them. They are still going strong. But I got challenged at some point a couple years after that by a friend who is no longer here. He's deceased. And when I went and studied the information that he gave me, or no, not gave me, but he challenged me to go study. Um, here's the thing. This might answer some questions. If you're a believer, greetings, Sheila, greetings. What's up, Sandra? I miss you too. Miss you by putting your comment up here. Yeah. All right. So I wanted to I'm getting off track. So the thing about why some of us come out, how was I able to study something that was against something I wholeheartedly believe? Listen, believers, listen to what I'm finna say. If what you believe is absolutely the truth, it will not hurt you to investigate evidence that others are saying is contrary to what you believe. Why? Because if what you believe is absolutely true, it's going to be true at the end of the investigation. I'm here to tell you that was my mindset. So I went ahead, that made me unafraid to go and study things that were against what I already believe. The thing is, I had to be honest with what I found. And here we are. So now, uh appreciate all y'all. Shout out to my boy Chief Kali. Y'all already know the music, how we get started and we roll with it. We will be ending it that way. I am expecting Richie, if he's able and has the time, I'm expecting Richie to come back in here and talk to us. I did enjoy the brief conversation we had on the last show about partial preterism. Now, preterist is something that's new to me. Y'all, when I was in, I'm gonna just tell y'all right now, from the outset, I was hoping he would come in here, and I was gonna treat it as if I were a student, because this topic about Jesus coming back was something I kind of took for granted. My time in the church, my goal was focused on getting people in and getting people saved. Wasn't so much worried about when Jesus coming back. I just believed that he was coming back. So what was important was to get as many people saved before that happened. I didn't really have any debates or arguments or come in contact with people that hadn't much to say about it. I'm just now hearing about this whole preterist thing. Richie, I sent you the link. If you want to go ahead and come on and hit the link, then that's cool. You'll pop up in my feed here and I'll add you. I got some tabs up, some scriptures up. Hopefully, we'll be able to look at some things. And Richie, what I really want to do, like I said, not this ain't my particular vein, but there are a lot of things. So we can go over this tonight. However, I'm gonna ask you some questions. Like I told you before, Richie, I treat this with a critical eye. I don't believe none of it. However, I want to see if your information is compelling. And myself and the guests that are here, we're gonna have some conversation. We're gonna have us a show tonight. Chris has said something. Let's see what Chris is saying. And Richie is back. Let me get my screens right, y'all. Give me a second. Get my screens right. Yeah, Richie. Richie, what's up? Can you hear me, man?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me good?
Oh, real good. Actually, it's loud. Let me turn it down a little bit. Um, so let me read the comment from Chris. Like I said, Chris, this is his main thing, but I'm willing to be taught tonight, but I am going to treat it with a critical eye, like I explained. We cool with that?
Yes, cool, definitely. Love a
Okay.
challenge.
Let me see what Chris says. He says, "How many have the courage to really examine what's perceived as conflicting with their present paradigm with the same intensity they study into their present paradigm?" That's a good question. How many study to contradict their biases, not studying only to confirm them? And I think, Chris, that is a relevant question for all of my shows and all of these conversations, because that's a hard thing to do. I mean, scientists, people that are used to doing it, can kind of do it, even though we have some creationist scientists, surprisingly. But I think that's important for a believer. I think that's important for you, Richie, for myself. Even right now, as a non-believer, I still go and look into the arguments that the believers come up with. It's just that none of them have been compelling to the point to make me come back into a belief. Now that I've said all that, because I'm thinking I'm gonna go into next week. Richie, we'll talk, but I think I need to go into next week because I got a lot of stuff said about me in my threads, and I need to let people know who I am and what I'm doing. So I'll try to do that again, unless my supporters, if y'all feel like I need to do that, because I want to answer some questions and be clear. People think that I'm doing this because I got church hurt. Not so. Absolutely not. So I'm gonna leave it there. I don't want to waste any more of my time. Richie, you had a good day, man.
Oh yeah, definitely, man. And to what Chris is saying, that's the scientific method, to be able to falsify the theory. If you can't falsify something, then you can't make it a theory. But on the other end of things, there are things which is called law. Like there is no such thing as a theory of the shape of the Earth. You know what I'm saying? The Earth is round, and you can't falsify that if you have an image of the Earth. You know what I'm saying? For those who believe the Earth is still round, and the only way you could say the Earth is not round, you got to say that the information we've got is a lie. You know what I'm saying? But other than that, there are things in this world, in this existence, in this universe that are law and that are factual. And as if the Christian testimony can be falsifiable, then Jesus is not who he say he is. You know what I'm saying? So you got to expect, the Christian to believe that it's law. And when the contradictions come their way, they got to either pray or and to resolve the perceived contradiction. And that's what I'm here to do. Like, I'm not going to take up the whole show. If other people want to come on the show and want to dialogue, whatever. But I just want to take a. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, by the way, let me tell them. Let me put that on the bottom. If y'all want to go to the YouTube channel, what it is scrolling at the bottom there. Y'all go ahead and like and subscribe. Now, if you want to come on, put it in the comments. I need to know you're a real person. About a couple months back, I did get somebody to photobomb my live stream. I'm not trying to have that happen again. What do they call it? They call it porn bombing. They did that thing when I clicked on the link, some porn came up. I didn't know what I was clicking on. So we're not having that. So if you want to come on the show, you need to inbox me at Facebook. I kind of got my phone up here and some other stuff. Let me know and I will shoot you the link and we can have the conversation. But without further ado, I'm kind of gonna play student tonight. And Richie, really, it's up to you. The only thing I want us to get to for sure is some of the language and revelation, because I want to end this tonight about him coming shortly or coming quickly. But I got some tabs up. If you need me to pull up a scripture, let me know what you want. And you got the flow, brother. Let's go.
Let me see. The last time I was on the show, we was and the topic for the week is the coming of Christ, and we was going through that talking about the partial preterist view of Matthew 24 and the rest of the New Testament prophecies. But then you
Right.
brought up if anything, like if the person's supposed to believe this Bible is divinely inspired, then there shouldn't be any perceived contradiction or error from a being that created this universe. You know what I'm saying? And you brought up
Right.
the whole discrepancy between the 6 days and the 8 days between the transfiguration. And we were looking at Luke and Mark, I believe,
Yeah,
right?
let me bring those. Let me bring those back up for it to be familiar. Let me. It's gonna. I don't know why I didn't already have those up, but give me a second.
Yeah.
I'm gonna bring those back up so people can see. I thought I had Matthew 16. All right, hold on. I gotta open a new tab. Bam. Yeah,
And
we.
on your YouTube
Mhm.
channel, you had a person that commented too about, if you combine the four gospels, you have another gospel. And also with
Right. That
so
was Phoenix Rising made that comment, which I do agree with because I've heard one of my favorite scholars say it many times.
yeah, so now I'm gonna kind of like try to kill two birds with one stone, meaning that I'm gonna address this perceived contradiction, and in the process showing you how combining the gospels doesn't give you a new gospel, it gives you the bigger picture.
Okay. Let me what I'm gonna share first, y'all should see Matthew 16:28 up there first. Y'all see that? Richie, are you able to see that?
Yeah, very kind of
Okay.
small.
All right, let me make it a little bigger here. I gotta go to the top. Font size. All right, how's that? Is I mean, do I go one more? All right, here we go. Is that better as far as the font size?
Um, yeah, and I could zoom in on my from my end too.
Okay, and I need to get the other
This is
text
Luke.
when
I think it's Mark
yeah,
9 and Luke 9,
yeah.
right?
Mark 9, I'm gonna bring those up in separate tabs because we may kind of switch back and forth. Mark 9. Right. And also, Richie, just to let you know, the other reason I do this is because when I found out something, I was a preacher in the church, and I don't some believers they want you to stop talking once you left. Well, here's the thing. This is what I do, and in my estimation of things, I spent 20 years of my life preaching for the church and for Christ and all of that kind of stuff. And now that I'm finding out that things are not as I thought they were, no, I'm not gonna be quiet because this is what I've been doing for the last 20 years of my life. Why would I stop doing that? Luke 9.
I mean, that's a big leap, 20 years of your life dedicated to a worldview, and then I mean, on another level, how do you see do you see that time period as a waste of time, or
Well, for when I first had my deconversion day, I often tell people here, and I got the text up, but let's go there for a minute to break. Somebody's calling me. No, they're not. All right. To break it up a little bit, my deconversion, I often tell people, I had this moment where, man, I cried for 3 hours because I couldn't believe that what I had been doing the last 20 years of my life was not as I thought it was. And yeah. So it was traumatic. What did you ask me? I'm doing so much over here.
yeah, no,
I
because
want
as you was finding the scriptures, I was just killing the silence, what I'm saying, with some small talk.
bet.
Yeah,
Well, I got it up now. I got Matthew up, and I can always switch to Mark and Luke.
yeah. So let's do
So
the Luke one first.
all right, so let's go to Luke. Share this tab instead. All right, Luke 9:27 is what I started with, and it
Yeah.
shows the text above so y'all can see the reference text. And let me put the red letter on so they'll know when Jesus talking. All right, so just tell me where you want me to read. I
Yeah,
got you.
let's start from verse 17.
17.
Yeah.
Okay, Luke 9. Let me scroll back up. All right, Luke 9:17. It says, and they did eat and were all filled, and there was taken up of fragments that remained to them 12 baskets. I'm gonna continue. Verse 18. And
Wait,
it
hold
came
on.
to
But before when you scroll, the part you're reading cuts off because you have. No, no, I'm good now. We're good now. I see it now. That was my
oh,
fault.
okay.
Hey, go on. Yeah.
Okay. I'll try to keep it in the middle. So I'm on verse 18 now. It says, and it came to pass as he was alone praying, his disciples were with him, and he asked them, saying, whom say the people that I am?
So between verse 17 and 18, you could agree and logically agree that there's like a time gap between these two verses. Meaning that verse 17 is talking about when he fed the 5,000 and the baskets that they, filled up. And then verse
Yeah,
18 goes, and it came to pass. So, so we have like a time shift here. And you agree that this represents that, right?
I think the language calls for that. With I
Okay.
can consent that, because it says in verse 18, it says, and it came to pass. So it seems like an unknown period of time,
Mhm.
but it is some time passing there.
And another thing here I want to remember as we go to the other scriptures, that as it shows that he was alone praying. So basically, there was nobody around him, and then the disciples came to him. Okay, thank you. Keep on.
Oh, okay. I'm thinking about something about that being alone, but okay. His disciples were with him, and he asked them, saying, whom say the people that I am? Verse 19. They answered, and they answering, said, John the Baptist, but some Elias, and others say that one of the old prophets is risen again. Verse 20. He said unto them, but whom say ye that I am? Peter answering said, the Christ of God. 21. And he straightly charged them and commanded them to tell no man that thing. Verse 22. Saying, the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected of the elders and chief priests and scribes, and be slain and be raised the third day. Verse 23. And he said unto them all, if any man will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me. For whosoever will save his life shall lose it, but whosoever will lose his life for my sake, the same shall save it. Verse 25. For what is a man advantaged if he gain the whole world and lose himself or be cast away? Verse 26. For whosoever shall be ashamed of me and my words, of him shall the Son of Man be ashamed when he shall come in his own glory and in his Father's and of the holy angels. Verse 27. But I tell you of a truth, there be some standing here which shall not taste of death till they see the kingdom of God. You want me to go ahead and get
And then
28?
this verse 28, we're gonna end at 28.
Okay, 28. And it came to pass about in 8 days after these things, he took Peter and John and James and went up into a mountain to pray.
Okay. So now, before we go combining any gospels, we have to take each gospel as they're given to us for what it is presented to us. So
Mhm.
from this gospel alone, all we know that, and it came to pass, he was somewhere praying alone. The disciples came to him, asked him a question, and he said all that stuff, and about the denying himself. And as you read the other scriptures, you're going to see the similar language, which we know they're talking about the same thing, which is why you see the contradiction of between the 8 days and the 6 days. But one thing we could see from this book alone, that you could count the countdown of the 8 days is going to start at the beginning of these sayings, from when it started, from when Jesus was praying alone and he came to them. This is what you logically will pull from this. And I might ask you, do you agree with that?
Okay, let me make sure I understand. You're saying the count of the days that happened in 28 starts
Because after these
Where?
sayings, so we got to go to the beginning of these sayings. So we're gonna keep scrolling up.
Okay, what? Yeah, let me see which verse. Because that was
At
way
verse
up
18.
here. 18.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Reason
18
why I
and it
say
came to
that is
pass. Okay,
because there is no other time, like indication of time gap or time jumps, because we got a time jump from at verse 18 from when he fed the 5,000 to here, and after that there's no indication of time jumps. So when it says, after these sayings, we got to begin the countdown from when he started saying these sayings, which is verse 18. I mean, can you
okay.
logically agree from that, or
If
do you think I'm
if
reaching?
I understand you okay, your countdown of the days that Luke is speaking of
Mhm.
starts here in 18.
Yeah, yeah. Because if you
Okay,
read
so
through it, you're not gonna get no indication of any other time gaps. Like, then it came to pass he went somewhere else, or 2 days later he went somewhere else. It's just basically he was praying alone. Disciples came to him and he was talking to him, and he said a lot of stuff. Then it says 8 days after these sayings, then he went to the transfiguration.
okay, and it came to pass, and he was praying alone. And then it says his disciples. Wait, and it came to pass as he was praying alone, praying, his
Mhm.
disciples were with him, and he asked them, whom say the people. So they have this conversation about who is he really.
Mhm, mhm.
And we see the conversation, and I'm scrolling down. He's still talking to them. Sounds like the same conversation. Okay, wait. Let's look at this right here. He says, Son of Man must suffer things, be rejected. All right, raise the third day. Number 9. Okay, he's still just having a conversation with them.
And he said to them all. Mhm.
Okay.
And remember that part too. And he said to them all. Remember that too in the back of your mind.
Where you saw
Verse
that?
23, 9:23.
Okay. And he said to them all, if any man will come after me, let him deny himself. Okay, I see the conversation. For whosoever will say, okay, I see the conversation. I'm just kind of skimming now. I'm not reading
Yeah,
for the
yeah,
people
yeah,
that's
yeah.
there.
Because it's all red words. It's all red words. So yeah.
Right. This all seems to me the same conversation. Okay. But I tell you of a truth, there be some that stand here. Then we get to 28, and it says, and it came to pass about an 8 days after
these
these
sayings.
sayings. So what it sounds like to me, let me tell you what I understand. Since you're teaching me tonight, this is the way I understood everything I just read. That whole conversation, and I believe the context works like I'm finna tell you in Matthew and in the other text. That whole conversation seems to take place. And then when I get to 28, the way I'm reading that is 8 days after that conversation.
And
Because
there's no
says
indication of no time gap. It's just one big conversation. Then 8 days after this conversation, this is what you're going to get from Luke.
Right. And so after that conversation is taking place, then it says, and it came to pass about an 8 days after these sayings, and those sayings, the antecedent to that is all that stuff he just said. So once that conversation is over, Luke says 8 days later, in our language, he took Peter, James, and John and went up into a high mountain to pray. That's the way I understand it.
Yeah, definitely. And it's logic. You put logic to it. There's no, I'm saying, deeper understanding to what you're reading here. Like, you basically reading this and you're getting the logic from it 8 days after these things. But I do want you to notice, like, when it go up a little bit.
Okay.
Verse 23, when it says, and he said to them all. Like, I find that interesting because we know that he was praying alone and his disciples came to him and he had the conversation. Then it goes and he said to them all, which just kind of threw me off. Like, why you have to put that there when they're already there? You know what I'm saying? Like, you're already talking to them. So that means that, you're saying this before that, verse 22, verse 21. And then you go and he said to them all. So, but Luke, there's no explanation within Luke what that means. So I think we're pretty much done with Luke for now. We could go to Matthew's version of it.
Okay. Let's see, Matthew. You mean Mark, or you?
Yeah, these do Matthew's. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Matthew 17 then. Okay. Because you want me to start on Transfiguration, right?
Basically the same thing. Like we're gonna go, and when it comes to the stuff that he said that's similar, if you probably want to, if you want to skim through it, or if you don't mind reading it again, it's up to you and your
Oh
audience.
no, I don't mind reading it because I want to be thorough tonight. So
Okay, cool,
after
cool, cool.
Matthew 16:28, after Matthew 16:28, the scripture that was in question about him saying this generation shall not pass, we are now in Matthew 17,
Yeah, so we're
verse
gonna
number
go to
1.
16 first. We're gonna go to 16 so we could go
16,
before.
okay, and back up, okay. 16 in the last verse or 16?
Let's start at
Or did you
verse
want to
13,
start?
verse 13.
Right.
Yeah.
And boy, if it's Church of Christ people on here, we know this passage because this was our text right here.
Yeah.
Matthew 16:13.
Mhm.
When Jesus came to the coast of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, saying, "Who do men say that I, the Son of Man, am?"
Oh, so
And
hold
they
on.
said,
Before you go on, I just want to make a point real quick. So notice now in this version of Matthew, we have a detail we never had in Luke. We now have a location. He's saying he was in Caesarea Philippi when he asked this question. But the one thing that Luke gave us that Matthew don't give us was that alone. You know what I'm saying? So now
Yeah,
Matthew's verse,
okay.
he was alone when he was alone praying and it came to him, and he asked that question. But in Mark's, now we read in Matthew, he's given this location, but we don't have the detail of Luke saying that he was alone. That's not a contradiction because that's just one detail. You know, if basically saying if Matthew said that he wasn't alone because he has a contradiction, but the exclusion of a detail doesn't mean contradiction because as when the Gospels are written, even in the beginning, first given to the people, they were always accepted as eyewitness testimonies. There was no time in history where the Gospels were accepted as stories. Like the people who believed them back in those days accepted them as eyewitness testimonies. So if you look at it from that angle, we could see that we could start looking at different details, different point of views given. But like I said, there are points though where we could say like, look, contradiction, which are the account of the days. So I just want to make that point. See new details in this Matthew's version that was in the Luke's version. You could continue.
Okay, and I'll make this comment before I read. I understand that point about there being new details and being told from a different perspective. And just so everybody knows, to be fair and be clear, I'm not talking about new details. I'm only talking about what may be a contradiction when you can't have it both ways. So I do understand one person may point out some details that another person may not point out. However, I think all of us at this point recognize we are talking about the same conversation that's getting ready to happen because they asked the same question that was asked in Luke. Who do men say I, the Son of Man, am? Luke says a different way, but no argument there, no contradiction there. It's basically the same thing. We good so far? Richie, did I lose you? Hello? Oh man, he dropped out. Just Richie, just hit the link and come back in, man. Come back in. I don't know what happened. But I don't want to say too much until Richie really is able to come back in. And y'all bear with us tonight with the technical difficulty because we're gonna get it in. We're gonna get it in. But we need Richie to come back. Now, what I think, Richie, if you are still listening, just what I think you're pointing out, I see how you're pointing out Matthew, and now you're in the coast of Caesarea Philippi. He asks his disciples, "Who do men say that I, the Son of Man, am?" I don't have any issues with that. This whole conversation, I don't even see a contradiction unless I go back and comb through. But I don't see a contradiction that happens in the conversation or any of that. My issue is after this conversation happens, okay, after this conversation, the writers between Matthew and Luke and even Mark, the writers indicate a number of days after the conversation. And that's That's where I'm coming to, everybody. They indicate a number of days after the conversation. And while I was looking at that, I was trying to focus on exactly what Richie was showing me, so I wasn't able to see y'all's comments. I'm gonna go and look at y'all's comments, and we hope we can get Richie back. Let me see if I can message him. I don't know what happened there. 1 second, y'all. 1 second. What happened? Are you coming back? Are you coming back? Richie, we need your second coming. All right. Y'all get what I'm saying? Okay, Chris Thrill, time lapse. My last comment is extended from the one preceding. That just another offer right in that. The days aren't the only. Let's see what you said here, Chris. The days aren't the only imperative, but the activity written to have transpired after the length of time prior to it. That's exactly what I'm getting at. That's exactly what I'm getting at. What the day? Well, that, but then the activity written to have transpired. When we start to talk about the end and everything of that nature, I don't know if Richie's gonna be able to come. Okay, there he is.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell y'all something, man. The devil don't like me. The devil don't like me, dude. What just happened made no sense, B. Like it made no sense, but whatever.
Okay,
Whatever.
yeah, we could just start. I was just telling them where I was going with it. I was really trying to wait because I didn't want to say too much until you were able to get back in here. So
Yeah, I just had to reboot my whole phone. Yeah, it made no sense.
dang,
But
man.
whatever.
Okay, well, we are. You were making the point that now we got a location and everything.
Yeah,
And I
okay.
had no issue with that there. No issue with that there. So we
Yeah,
can
you could continue reading now. You
making
could
your point.
continue reading.
Okay.
Yeah.
Matthew 16:14. And they said, some say thou art John the Baptist, some Elias, and others Jeremiah or one of the prophets. He saith unto them, but whom say ye that I am? 16. And Simon Peter answered and said, thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. Verse 17. And Jesus answered and said unto them, blessed art thou, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood have not revealed it unto thee, but my Father which is in heaven. Verse 18. And I say unto thee that thou art Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. And I will give unto thee the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatsoever thou shalt bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatsoever thou shalt loose on earth shall be loose in heaven. Then charged he his disciples that they should tell no man that he was Jesus the Christ. Yeah, you want me? Let
Yeah,
me
keep
know.
going because we want to get to. We're gonna end with the same thing with the 6 days
Okay.
later thing.
All right, verse 21. For that time forth began Jesus to show his disciples how that he must go unto Jerusalem, suffer many things of the elders and chief priests and scribes, and be killed, and be raised again the third day. Then Peter took him and began to rebuke him, saying, be it far from thee, Lord, this shall not be unto thee. But he turned unto Peter, get thee behind me, Satan. Thou art an offense to me, for thou savorest not the things that be of God, but those that be of men. Verse 24. Then said Jesus unto his disciples, if any man will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whosoever will save his life shall lose it, and whosoever will lose his life for my sake shall find it. For what is a man profited if he shall gain the whole world and lose his soul? Or what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? Verse 27. For the Son of Man shall come in the glory of his Father with his angels, and then he shall reward every man according to his works. Verse 28. Verily I say unto you, there be some standing here which shall not taste of death, till they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom.
Mhm. And then
Next
you end
chapter.
with verse 17:1.
All right.
Yep. Hmm.
Verse 17, verse 1 says, And after 6 days, Jesus taketh Peter, James, and John, his brother, and bringeth them up into a high mountain apart.
Okay. So now here we have in this account now, we got detail, we got location. We also know that it was Peter that started that conversation that you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. So, Luke just said that basically, they said unto him, but it didn't really say who. But we also get a new event in this one. We got an event where, he told him he's about to die, and Peter said no, and he rebuked him. That wasn't in Luke. So we have an event right here. And then we have him saying, turn to his disciples and said, then we have that whole speech again about, denying himself. And then it says after 6 days, Jesus take him to the thing. So there's no indication of any time gap here either, though, because we know that him going to Philippi, Caesarea, that's basically the new scene, but there's no indication of any scene jump here. And the reason why I say like that too, because even as a script writer, like when I'm combining these things, I have to look at things like where a new scene start or where a new scene ends. So I don't see any scene jump here either. But you have a new event and you have a location. If I just read Luke, I wouldn't know they were in Philippi, Caesarea.
Okay.
But then they have the apparent contradiction now. It said, and after 6 days. But notice how it says here, though, how Luke said 6 days after these sayings, meaning that Luke was bundling all the sayings into one, and says
Luke,
that
I'm sorry,
8 days.
I don't mean to interrupt. Yeah, Luke,
Yeah.
Luke said 8. Matthew
Yeah. My fault. 8 days. Luke was bundling all the sayings into one, and said 8 days after these sayings, whereas Matthew was just saying, and after 6 days. It didn't say after these sayings, but it says after 6 days. But still, logically speaking, one will read Matthew and says that okay, there's no indication of any extra days to add here because they're in Philippi, Caesarea, and the same things that was happening in Luke basically were happening here, but we get more detail in another added scene of Peter and Jesus. So do you agree with everything I'm saying up until now, or any disagreements?
What I can agree on is that I'm reading it and I'm still basically seeing the same thing after the conversation.
Yep.
Because there is a similar conversation in Luke. It may have some different words, but it's the same conversation. And I'm just noticing like I said on the last show. So after that conversation, there's 6 days according to Matthew before Jesus takes him to the mountain. But in Luke, there's 8 days after that conversation, Jesus takes him to the mountain. That's the way I'm understanding this.
Oh yeah, and you're doing it logically. Like you read this by itself. You only have the book of Matthew. You're gonna say 6 days after this, and there's no indication of any other extra 2 days to add into Matthew because there's no scene jump there given between the conversation, how it starts and how it ends, right? Yep.
Okay.
And can you go back to the previous chapter real quick again before I move on to Mark? I want to point out something.
Okay, of Matthew.
Yeah.
Okay.
Basically, where you started from, I think that was verse.
My internet trying to move. I don't know why it's moving slow. I'm hardwired. Okay, here we go.
What verse was that?
Matthew 16:28. Or did you want to go back up further?
No, verse 13. But let's do verse 12. We started at 13. Let's do verse 12.
16:12.
Yeah.
All right, I'm scrolling back up. All right, here we go. It says, then understood they how that he bade them not beware of the leavened bread, but of the doctrine of the Pharisees and of the Sadducees.
Then verse 13.
12 and verse 13. Verse 13. When
Mhm.
Jesus came into the coast of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, saying, Who do men say that I, the Son of Man, am? I really
All right.
wish
So
I could
now,
get a
can you
sound
agree
effect.
now that between verse 12 and verse 13, even though remember how Luke said, "And it came to pass," so
Yeah, let
that
me.
basically indicates time. Time passing.
Okay.
Can you agree that between verse 12 and verse 13, there's going to be a time gap? Can you agree with that? And that we're not trying to reach into scriptures and change how it is, but it's logically speaking that, Jesus said verse 12, but now he basically saying he came to the coast. Do you agree there's a time gap here? It's not like, he could be at Capernaum, then all of a sudden, in 2 minutes, he could be in Philippi, Caesarea. You have to travel there, you have to walk there, right?
Right. There. I can say. I'm scroll back. I was looking at some stuff. Yeah. I mean, I see. It says when. So
Mhm.
there's something. I don't know how long that period of time, but yeah.
Yeah.
I can see that. Okay.
And to change the setting too, even if you look at it from a script writing point of view, he's here talking about the Pharisees in verse 12, and all of a sudden he's in Philippi Caesarea. So as a script writer, I'm gonna make a time jump. It's logic, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think we're done with Matthew. Now we could just finish up this whole thing and basically come to the conclusion to see if there's really a contradiction. So we're gonna do the Mark one now.
Mark. Okay. Let me get
Mhm.
Mark. You want me to start at Mark 9:1 or back up a little bit?
Let me see. They have
Or
to be
because
verse chapter 8. Yeah, we gotta start with chapter 8.
okay. All right. Let me pull that up. Okay. You got a specific verse you want to start at?
Verse 27.
Okay. Mark 8:27. It says, and Jesus went out
Maybe you
and
gotta
his
change it on the screen.
it's probably updated. You see it now?
I see
Mark
Matthew on
8.
the screen.
Oh, you know what? I didn't share. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm sorry.
Okay.
There we go. Y'all see it now?
Yep.
All right. Mark 8:27. And Jesus went out and his disciples into the towns of Caesarea Philippi. And by the way, he asked his disciples, saying unto them, Whom do men say that I am? And they answered, John the Baptist. But some say Elias, and others, one of the prophets. Verse 29. And he saith unto them, But whom say ye that I am? And Peter answered and saith unto him, That thou art the Christ. Verse 30. And he charged them that they should tell no man of him. Verse 31. And he began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected of the elders and of the chief priests and scribes and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. Verse 32. And he spake that saying openly. And Peter took him and began to rebuke him. But when he had turned about and looked on his disciples, he rebuked Peter, saying, Get thee behind me, Satan, for thou savorest not the things that be of God, but the things that be of men. Verse 34. And when he had called the people unto him with his disciples, also he said unto them, Whosoever will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whosoever will save his life shall lose it, but whosoever shall lose his life for my sake and the gospel's the same shall save it. Verse 36. For what shall it profit a man if a man shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Verse 37. Or what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? Verse 38. Whosoever therefore shall be ashamed of me and of my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of him also shall the Son of Man be ashamed when he cometh into the glory of his Father with the holy angels. Next chapter, Mark 9 and verse 1. And he said unto them, Verily, verily, I say unto you, that there be some of them that stand here what shall not taste death till they have seen the kingdom of God come with power. Verse 2. And after 6 days, Jesus taketh with him Peter and James and John, and leadeth them up into a high mountain apart by themselves, and he was transfigured before them.
Okay. So in this one, we got similarities with Matthew, that we got a location. We got the Peter scene too. And, we got and everything else is the same between Luke, Matthew, and Mark. But we still see that 6 days. Now, remember how before I asked you in Matthew when there was that time gap, where how it says then he went to the coast of Philippi, Caesarea. Even though the gospel doesn't say there was a time gap, we can apply logic and say, yes, there was a time gap, and we could move on and accept that. So, being that, this is still saying 6 days, is there anywhere in Mark that we could apply a time gap to add the extra 2 days, right, from Luke? And yet, when we come to verse 9, or verse 2, 9:2, we could say that, okay, after Jesus said, with the kingdom of God, there shall be some standing here, and 6 days after that, the transfiguration happened. Is there any, let's put it this way, let's take off our unbelief hats, let's take off our belief hats. Let's say like me and you were hired, right? We were like two film directors. We was hired to write a script. And we was given these 4 gospels, and it was like, look, I want y'all to make one movie out of this. Supposedly these are eyewitness testimonies. And you know what an eyewitness testimony is? It's a point of view of a person or a group of people from their point of view. And we know that with eyewitness testimonies, the exclusion of a detail doesn't mean the contradiction of if another witness said something else I didn't say. The only contradiction that will come is if we're saying something about the same thing. Like if you say the guy walked through a blue door, and I'm saying no, he walked through an orange door, then there's a contradiction. But if I say the guy walked through an orange door and he held up a gun, and you say the guy walked through an orange door, you're not saying that he didn't have a gun doesn't mean that there was not a gun.
Right.
Do you agree with that line of logic?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. So go back to Mark chapter 8.
Okay, hold on. That's Mark. Y'all are seeing 9 right now, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm backing up to 8. Mm-hmm. Okay. What verse would you like?
We started from again. It was
I think we started from down here, 27.
I'll put it up here. Mark, but Mark 34, 8:34.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So look where it says, and when he had called the people unto him with his disciples. Now remember in Luke's version, it was just the disciples and he was alone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then in Matthew, it says the same thing, that he was the disciples, and there's no indication that he was talking to anybody else. But now in Mark, we says that yes, and when he called the people with him, unto him with his disciples. So hold on, how, if I'm looking at this as a eyewitness testimony, I'm trying to combine them. I'm going to say, look, okay, Luke never mentioned that he was talking to other people. He said this to his disciples, right?
Okay.
If I accept all of these as eyewitness testimony, I'm going to say, okay, Jesus was alone. So how was he alone now? Now all of a sudden he's talking to people. Am I allowed to add a time gap between verse 33 and verse 34 logically? Can I add the 2 days there? And that's what I'm going to ask you. When it comes to looking at this logically, given to us as, we're film directors, we're given, they give us these things, the documents as eyewitness testimony. Am I allowed to use logic to place the extra 2 days in here, even though Mark never said there were 2 days in there?
The issue I see that you would have is, where are you wanting to place the 2 days? Just if you tell me where they are, then I can tell you.
It'll be between verse 33 and verse 34.
Okay,
because if you look at Luke, he was alone with his disciples. Now in Mark, we say that, okay, he's between 33 and 34, he's saying that he called the people onto him. So that means that he had to go to a different location in order to not be alone if there's people around you now other than your disciples.
Okay, so you're saying there would maybe a 2-day gap before he gets to those people and starts to say what he's saying in 34 about whosoever will come after me.
All I'm saying is this. If you want to apply the rules of logic to the 4 gospels and accept them for what they are, eyewitness testimonies, and we apply the rules of time gaps, meaning that if Jesus is changing the location, because if you think about it, this is 3 years of ministry in 24 chapters, in 12 chapters, in whatever, how many chapters, 20, 24, 20, whatever chapters we give. We're given 3 years of ministry. So we're going to know that there's going to be big time gaps. There's going to be short time gaps. When a person is giving an eyewitness testimony, they're giving it from their point of view, what they're seeing. So if I'm going to apply all of these gospels as one narrative, right, without changing any of them, I'm just plugging them in. Like, here's a piece here. Luke didn't tell me Philippi, Caesarea, right? But if you're telling me that I can't place Luke's version in Philippi, Caesarea because he didn't mention it, then basically you're saying that I should accept these as stories then.
Well,
and
no,
they would
I'm not
never
saying that.
I'm just saying that if someone was to say that, like if someone was to say that, Luke never mentioned Philippi, Caesarea, right? So therefore, I cannot go to Matthew, I cannot go to Mark and say he was in Philippi, Caesarea in Luke's version. Then basically you're saying that I should accept the Gospels as stories then. But they were never presented to the masses as stories. They were always presented as eyewitness documents. And as a film, as a film director and a writer, and as using the laws of logic, I found no contradiction combining all these 3 Gospels right here in this version.
Okay, let me I'm back on the 2 days. I'm on the 2 days. I'm gonna grant the whole thing about eyewitness. I mean, that would be a whole nother show. But anyway, where are you wanting to put the 2 days? And I need to see if it works. So
basically,
2 days.
This is why here's a whole story now. They go to Philippi, Caesarea, right?
Okay.
Jesus goes somewhere to pray. So they go out to scout the area. And if you look at it, that's always been like something that Jesus did. He would send his disciples first to scout the area. Then they came back to him. And then he was like, who people say that I am. So they were giving the reports, these people say you're John the Baptist, boom, 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 right? And he says, who do you say that I am? Then Peter come out and says, you are the Christ, Son of the living God. Then Jesus said that to Peter, right? And then he tells them, he has to die and whatever. Peter tries to say, no, I ain't gonna let that happen. Peter gets rebuked, right? And then 2 days later, he goes to people and gathers around them, and then he gives a speech about whoever will take up his, come after me, let him deny himself. And then from that point on, you could begin your 6-day countdown. Because remember, Luke is combining all of them from when he's on the mount by himself with his disciples up until the end as 8 days. But Mark gave us the needed time gap that's needed as a film writer to introduce that 2 days that Luke has given us extra.
Okay, and all right, you ready for me to explain where?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm pretty much done for the night. I mean, done giving the whole spiel.
Okay. Well, yeah. I want you to, like I said, it's fairly new. So the issue that I'm having is this. I'm looking at Mark 8:33. I'm looking at 34. Even if you insert 2 days there, let's look at what happens at the end. And this is where my logic is coming in. When you look at the end of Mark, okay, if you already have these 2 days in between Mark, like you said, I'm scrolling down and I'm looking at Mark 8:38, and I'm just using that to show people I'm about to click and go to the next chapter, and they'll hear the similarities. And Mark 9:1, he says, and he said unto them, verily I say unto you, there be some that stand here. Now he's making that statement at some point in real time, according to those that believe Jesus really said this. So at some point in our existence of time, there are people that believe Jesus says, verily I say unto you that there be some of here, blah, 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 blah. We got verse 1. All right. Verse 2 of Mark 9 then says, and after 6 days. What now? Here's my logic, and I got to get to Matthew, and I'm gonna do the same thing with Luke. And after 6 days, he's still saying 6 days, but it's after we read him saying, verily I say unto you that there be some, after he says Mark 9:1. So if you were to put the 2 days in there, this doesn't happen after 6 days. It would have happened after 8 days, it would seem to me in Mark, unless I'm misunderstanding. However, I'm gonna continue with my line of understanding. Mark ends that those sayings and all that kind of ends in Mark 1, and then we have after 6 days he does this. When I go to Matthew, okay, I'm gonna go to Matthew. I'm scrolling down to the bottom. Matthew says in Matthew 16:28, he says, verily I say unto thee, there be some standing here which shall not taste death till they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. That Matthew 16:28 sounds, oh wait, y'all didn't see that. I just want to share it. Okay, Matthew 16:28 says what it says. Y'all see that there? Verily I say unto thee, there be some standing here which shall not taste death till they see the Son of Man coming in the kingdom. Now I'm going back to Mark to remind us, and let me share the tab. Mark 9:1 seems to be saying exactly what Matthew says in 16:28. Verily I say unto you that there be some that stand here which shall not taste death till they have seen the kingdom come with power. Okay, that's now I'm going to Luke. What was it? Luke. Luke 9:27. Jesus says again, but I tell you of a truth, there be, wait, y'all not seeing that. Let me share the tab. Okay. Luke 9:27. But I tell you of a truth, there be some standing here which shall not taste death till they see the kingdom of God. Okay, so what Mark said, what Matthew said, and what Luke said so far, as far as I'm concerned, that's an agreement. Here's where it comes. It seems in the logical reading of this, after Jesus says those words, whenever he says them, and it came to pass about 8 days after these sayings. If I'm reading Luke, after all of that saying, I count 8 days from that period where it says kingdom of God. I'm counting 8 days because he says it came to pass about 8 days and 8 days after these sayings. Well, what were the sayings? Whatever Jesus said.
Before that, yeah, all those things.
And then when I go to Mark, and I'm reading right after Jesus made nearly the same identical statement, Mark is basically saying after Jesus said, there be some standing here that will see the kingdom of God after 6 days. Jesus taketh Peter, James, John. Now go to Mark. Y'all not see. I keep forgetting to share the tab. That was Mark. Y'all see it right there. He says the same thing that Luke says, and then he says after 6 days. Matthew. Let me share the tab. Okay, Matthew. Again, we see 16:28. Verily I say unto you, there be some standing here. Same passage, but we got to go to the next chapter. Y'all watch it. And after 6 days, Jesus taketh Peter, James, John. Now, I'm not saying I got this right. I'm not even going to say that. But what I am going to say, that is the plain logical reading of the text. You have 3 writers that say pretty much the same thing. And right after that, it would be kind of like if me and you in that situation, that illustration you gave, and you say, hey, when he opened the door, the orange door, he had a gun. And then I say, yeah, the guy opened the orange door. And then we have a third person say, yeah, after the orange door was open, that guy says he had a gun. So I'm the only one that left out the detail of the gun, but we all three of us said the orange door, and in that order, the door opened. Now we get asked, well, what happened after the door was open? Okay, well, you might say he pulled the trigger and shot the guy. I might say he never pulled the trigger. I never heard a gun. And then the other guy says, yeah, he pulled the trigger. Those are contradictory stories, or my testimony in that regard is not the same as those other two testimonies. And what I'm saying is Mark and Matthew, they say 6 days. Luke says 8. I'm sorry, but I didn't hear a reconciliation from your explanation. I didn't hear a reconciliation of that. And I'm really trying, bro. I am not trying to be funny. I don't hear it.
Let's address each gospel by itself. If you read Gospel of Luke by itself, it's 8 days after these sayings. And you have to take into consideration when that term after these sayings, you got to begin when Jesus first started talking, from when he's alone with the disciples to the end, till we get to the 8 days, right? And when you read Mark and when you read Matthew, you're going to get that 6 days after the last thing he said, because it doesn't say after these sayings, right? It just says 6 days after. But as we said before, if reading the Gospels and Jesus changes location, you have to assume a time gap. Like time has to pass for you to move from point A to point B, right? In Luke, we basically don't get no indication of any change in time, because it says he was alone and then he had all these sayings and then you have the 8 days. But we're gonna begin the countdown from when he first started talking, because it says after these sayings. We have to bundle all the sayings together. In Matthew, we basically have him saying the same stuff. Then it says 8 days after this, the transfiguration happened. So we don't begin the countdown from when he first started talking. We begin the countdown from when he said the last thing, right? Because it doesn't say after these sayings.
Right. I'm saying the countdown starts after the sayings. That's what it seems to me when I read.
Well, Matthew and Mark, yes.
After the sayings, or after, and part of the sayings is this. Part of the sayings was when Jesus said, there be some of you that stand here that will not taste of death until they see the kingdom coming with power, until, in Matthew's version, until they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. Let's just agree that after the sayings, that is included in the sayings. So now the writers say after 6 days. Well, when was the 6 days start? After the sayings.
So after the last verse in Matthew and Mark, you have to say after the last thing he said, the countdown begins from there.
Right. Either way, they all conclude the same way, is my point.
Luke
concludes on Luke concludes on him saying, there be some of you that will not pass away. Mark concludes the saying with there be some of you that will not pass away. Matthew concludes that way. Now, if it's in harmony, if any of those writers say after these sayings, then we know they're talking about a countdown that starts after he was done. The problem is Mark and Matthew say 6 days, while Luke is saying no, after the sayings it was 8 days.
Yeah.
And that's the whole, that's my thing, bro.
Yeah. So like I said, you're looking at it from the angle like, okay, these are 3 stories, and because they're written as fiction, that means that they're not going to be consistent. It's kind of like having a plot hole in the Marvel universe. Like you have different directors of a movie, and the other director has a different vision, so he neglects like the other stuff that happened in this movie, and it seems like it's a plot hole. But if I say these are not movies, these are eyewitness testimonies. Every man had had a camera, right? So Luke, I'm the Luke camera, right?
Well, you can't. Oh, I'm not trying to interrupt you and be rude. Remember, Luke is not an eyewitness, and he tells us that in the beginning of his book.
No, yeah,
That's
definitely,
what I
definitely.
think part
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
problem.
It's basically the book is he's saying that he's getting it from eyewitnesses. He's writing it from he's like interviewing people and getting information down and all that stuff.
Okay.
And he's writing it to like this this noble person or this ruler. But in the sense of like I was saying before, if we accept these as eyewitness testimonies, right? Then I'm going to look at this critically as eyewitness testimonies, meaning that these people are not trying to tell a story; they're trying to tell us something that happened, right? So, like I said, the exclusion of information does not necessarily means contradiction.
I agree.
So, if Luke is just taking all these, and we know the gospel do this a lot. The gospels would basically bundle a whole when Jesus would say certain things. Like they will probably bundle stuff he said on Saturday and then stuff he said on Wednesday all together in one. But we're reading it, you know what I'm saying, as if it's just one moment in time, you know what I'm saying? Because that's how it's presented to us. So with Luke, when you look at Luke, what Luke is doing, right? He's taking all of the sayings, right, from when it began, right? When Jesus was alone on the mountain with them. And he's saying, okay, from when Jesus first started talking, after these sayings, to the end of this talk, to the end of his speech, there's 8 days until the transfiguration.
Okay,
But
okay. I think I see where we're different. I think I just seen where we were different. Okay, you're counting your 8 days at the beginning of the sayings. Is that right?
yes, for Luke,
All right.
yes.
Okay. Okay. I see that's what you're doing. I need to understand how that will hold the integrity of the text together because it doesn't appear to be doing that. I mean, it's just not written that way. So if you could, and we'll try to nail this down in the next few seconds, but then while I got you here, I want to get to some of this language about Jesus coming quickly, and it's been nearly 2,000 years. But I really want to nail that down. You're starting your sayings then, but there is clearly, let me see, is it Matthew? Let me see. Matthew says, after 6 days. Let me see what Mark says. Let me share the tab so y'all can look at this. After 6 days. And let me see where Luke is. Hold on one second. Luke says, and it came to pass about that's what now Luke, the one that you're really breaking down here,
Mhm.
he says it came to pass about in 8 days. He doesn't say during the sayings, he doesn't say at the start of the sayings. He says after these sayings, which
Yeah,
seems to indicate to me the sayings are complete, they're over with.
yeah,
And 8 days after these sayings, that would mean the sayings have completed before the 8 days start, not starting at the sayings, we start counting days. I don't see that in the grammar of the text. In the English, I don't see it.
it says 8 days after these sayings. So the
Right.
8 days are going to start after the sayings have begun, right? So meaning that you still have to group all these sayings together. Like when he start talking to them, from when he's alone with them on the mountain until the end of his speech, all that happened, and then 8 days after that, right? From Luke. Like so, where would you begin the sayings then when it says after these sayings?
The sayings are already over because in Luke he says after
These
these
sayings.
sayings. That means sayings are over.
Yeah, 8 days after these sayings.
Yeah, it came to pass about in 8 days after these sayings. So the sayings are over. You got to start counting 8 days after they end. After they end, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But Matthew and Mark say they end, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Mhm.
That's the whole contradiction right there.
Yeah, but when you read Luke by itself, though, you do agree when he starts talking to them on the mount by himself to the end of his speech, you're gonna count the 8 days, right? Like the countdown is gonna start from when he's speaking to the end of his speech in Luke, right? If you're
It's
reading
gonna,
that by itself.
according to what I'm reading in Luke, is yet when he's done with his speech, when he's done with the sayings, we start to count 8 days from that point.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And we both agree with that. But what I'm saying is that what are the sayings? Everything that was said before that, right?
Okay. Did I lose you again, Richie? Oh, okay. I just lost audio. I still see you in here.
Okay, you got me?
Okay, I see. Yeah.
Yeah. So we both agree with that. Like basically you're gonna count down 8 days after the sayings. But that the sayings that Luke is mentioning begins when Jesus is by himself. That's what you get from Luke, right?
The sayings that Jesus is mentioning is when he's by himself.
Yeah, when he's by himself and the disciples come to him, he starts talking to them. You do agree that basically you're gonna start counting down. You're gonna include all those sayings into the countdown, right? Like I hope I'm not losing you on that logic.
You might be. I'm trying to follow it. All
All right,
right.
so maybe phrase it a different way. What are the sayings then? Like that Luke is referring to.
The sayings. All right. Let me read some saying.
Like
All
where
this
would you
stuff.
like begin the sayings then?
Okay, let me see. Let me scroll back up and see where I would start on some man, myself, man, straight lay charge, but whom you say that I am. Oh man. If you, because we're talking about narration here, and Luke talking about if we can back these sayings, you can start them for my purposes. You can start them wherever you like. I'm just speaking of the
Like let's
period
go
of
to
time after the
go
saying.
down to verse 18. No. Yeah, verse 18. And it came to pass. I remember we both agreed that says that, and it came to pass indicates a time shift, right?
Okay. And yeah.
So would you basically logically begin the sayings from verse 18 when it says who people say that I am? Would you begin it there?
I I guess I could. Let me make sure I understand the story.
Mhm.
Jesus were with him, asked him who the men say that I, the Son of Man, am. Blah 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 blah. Blah 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 blah. Straightway charged them. Don't y'all talk about this. Verse 22. Son of Man must suffer things. Blah blah blah. This seems to me to be he was with his disciples. And then he goes into something deeper down here in verse 22. He says, the Son of Man must suffer many things. Yeah, all of this is part of the sayings. And I would start from the very point where he opens his mouth. I mean, the sayings are the sayings.
So you will say that the beginning verse.
Let me see. I'm going back up to the very beginning now.
Yeah.
Called us 12 together, gave them power, blah, 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 blah. Take nothing for your journey. Whosoever the house in blah, blah, blah. Verse 5, whosoever will not receive you, da 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 da. Let's see, 10 apostles when they were returned told him that they had done and took. Okay, feeding of the 5,000. Nah, I wouldn't say it started way back there. No. And it came to pass he was alone praying. Okay, here we go. He was alone praying. His disciples were with him and asked him, who the man say that I, Son of Man, am. That sparks all this talking and everything. Son of Man must suffer many things. Da 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 da. And he gives this long talk. Yeah, those are the sayings. It starts when he says, "Who do you say the Son of Man? Who do they say
that
the Son
I am?
of?" Yeah. It seems to start there. Yeah.
All right, so yeah, so we agree then on Luke. Then we agree that
Okay.
you're going to count the 8 days from the beginning of the sayings until the end. That's where you have the countdown.
No, I didn't say that. I'm not saying the 8 days start at the beginning of the sayings. That's not what I'm saying. Because see, the reason I can't say that is because when I get down here, let me scroll down a little bit. When I get down, was it down here? Wait. Behold, it's all good. Yeah. Let me scroll back up. I passed it. Okay, so when I get down here, the 27th, and I'm using a Christian understanding of the Bible,
Mhm.
when you look at Matthew, when you look at Mark, and then you look at Luke 9:27, it is in line with Matthew 16 28. It is in line with what I think is Mark 9:2. So that when I'm looking at those being in harmony with Luke 9:27,
Mhm.
my 8 days starts right there because it has to be after the sayings
The sayings.
that we
All
start.
right. So when it says the sayings, where would you begin your sayings then? In that verse, when it says after these sayings, where would you begin your sayings in?
They're over with, but
No, but
they
like, what are
start
the
with
sayings then? What are the sayings then? Where would you begin the beginning of the sayings? Like which verse?
in Luke it seems to start. Let me scroll back up. If any man will come take a little cross, son of man, suffer many things. But whom say? Answering said John. Okay, go up a little bit more. Where and it came to pass they were alone. I'm gonna say in Luke it seems to start at verse 18.
Yeah, and that's
Okay.
what I'm saying. We agreed that I'm starting to count down from verse 18 and verse 18 because
No,
it's
no,
all one saying.
we're not saying the same thing. The reason we're not saying the same thing is because you're saying 8 days start at the beginning of the
The
saying.
countdown, no, the countdown from the 8 days begin when he first started talking, right?
That wouldn't be the same thing as what I'm saying. So the reason we're different is because you're starting a countdown when he starts the sayings versus after the sayings. I'm
Because
starting the countdown after the sayings. You're starting the countdown when the sayings start.
yeah, because the sayings is one thing, according to Luke. It's after these sayings. So okay, let me try to rephrase this because we're saying the same thing, but maybe I'm not making it clear. The sayings that Luke is talking about is all the stuff he's talking about from verse 18, right, down to the end of his kingdom of God shall not they shall not see death until the kingdom of God comes in power, whatever. So after all that is said, then we begin the 8 day countdown, right?
After they done, and with the whole talk,
Mhm.
when he ends with what he said in Matthew 16:28, when he ends with I think is Mark 9:2, whenever he ends the same by saying, there be some that are here right now which will not taste death till the king. That's the end of the sayings. And
Yep.
then when Luke says after these sayings,
Yep.
that's when I start the countdown. The sayings are over, and after he says there be some that will not taste that, 8 days after he said that, according to Luke, but 6 days after he said that, according to Matthew and Mark. That's the plain reading of the text.
Yeah.
I mean, let me ask the people, like, am I missing something, y'all? I just I'm trying to see it, but I don't see it. And maybe they'll chime in. I hear Quentin. I guess Quentin understands you. Thomas Jackson. I'm missing it. Okay, let's see. Luke 9:28 is an approximation. I'm sorry. Evidence by it saying and or about 8 days after. Okay, so I knew the approximation thing was gonna come up from somewhere. But is
Yeah.
that what you're saying, Richie?
No,
It's
there's
an
no
approximation.
approximation. No. What I'm
Okay,
saying is that
well, let me point
basically,
this out. Let me
yeah.
point this out for Quentin. For Quentin, I'm pointing this out. Quentin, you're saying approximation. The gentleman I'm talking with right now says you're wrong.
No, I'm not saying he's wrong. That's his.
So it's
That's
not a
his. What I'm saying is that that's not what I'm saying. You feel what I'm saying? I'm not saying he's wrong. I'm saying what I'm
okay.
saying. That I'm not saying what he's saying.
Okay, well, Quentin, he's not saying what you're saying. So that approximation stuff that Quentin is saying, you're saying you don't agree with that, right? I don't agree with it either.
Because people will say because about 8 days, right? You could say about 7 days then if it's approximation. But what I'm saying from Luke, if I read Luke alone, I'm going to basically say that when Jesus first started speaking and to the end of his speech, I'm going to count 8 days later from that. Right, and that's
Okay.
what you and that's what you're saying too as well from Luke. You're saying that you're gonna make the countdown after he finished saying everything he said from Luke.
Okay. Maybe I'll chop up on it. I really think I'm understanding this correct, but hey, you know, I don't have no problem looking into it. As Thomas Jackson says, I'm missing it. Let me put that up on the screen. He says I'm missing it. Quentin says approximation, evidenced by it saying about 8 days. And like you, I think your logic, Richie, what you just said, well, if we're doing approximations, we could have said 9 days, we could have said 7 days, we could have said whatever. We could approximate whatever. Now, because we have gone long, and I
very
want to
long.
thank everybody for rocking with me, and I really appreciate talking to you, so because I can get somewhere and learn something when talking to someone like yourself. So I want to go into and we won't have time to deal in depth with it, but are you able to say a little bit about perhaps Revelation in this time frame of when Jesus is coming? Maybe give us some insight to preterists, because like I stated before, this preterist thing is very new to me. I recently heard of that.
I mean, what part of Revelation you're talking about in particular?
I'm gonna share this on the screen right here. Share this. For instance, Revelation 1, and then I'll go to 22:12 in a minute. I'm gonna read this one, and I thought I had a text for. Yeah, I got that one up. I just have to share it. So in Revelation, it says, "The revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave unto him to show unto his servants things which must shortly come to pass, and he sent and signified it by his angel unto his servant John." So we do have some time sensitive language, at least in the English. It says these things must shortly come to pass. And let me get the other text right quick, just for the sake of reference, and let me make the font bigger because it's the same on this screen. Okay, got that. Share this tab. Okay, Revelation 22:12. I'll start at verse 11, actually. No, the 12 is good. "And behold, I come quickly, and my reward is with me to give every man according to his work." Now, I started off this series with Matthew. I think it was focusing on Matthew 16 and verse 28, because Jesus appears to be saying that he will have returned before those individuals standing there that he's talking to would have passed away. His return would have already happened. They would see it. And it also seems to me the writers in the New Testament, they seem to write in that way. Of course, we don't have time to really dive into everything, but I'm trying to, I know that you looked into this a little bit, and being a preterist, I think you might be able to speak on some of this. So in your understanding, Matthew 16:28, if you'll tie that in with what I just read here about Jesus saying John saying these things must shortly come to pass, and then Jesus saying at the very end or near the end of the Bible, "Behold, I come quickly, and my reward is with me to give every man according to his work."
Mm-hmm.
What's your position on this? Are you a partial preterist?
Yeah, partial meaning that because I still believe in the future resurrection of everybody. Basically, I still believe that he's physically coming back. You know, like how Acts says that he went up into the sky, and the angels was like, "Same way you saw him going, the same way you should have seen him come back." So I do believe in like some physical manifestation of a return, and of Jesus in the in the air, like some alien invasion.
I think most Christians would agree. They believe that part. I think where you differ from what most of us on this channel might be used to is that you believe certain things already happened in the first century. Is that right?
Yeah, I believe that when Jesus was talking about, well, not believe, that when Jesus was talking about, he never said might return. The language that we use was the Son of Man coming into his kingdom. And that was always the language that he used in referring to those things. You shall see the Son of Man come into his kingdom. There shall be some, there's some here standing that shall taste of death and see the Son of Man come in his kingdom, or the kingdom of God come with power, et cetera, et cetera. Because the logic behind that is that when the disciples asked him, when shall these things be? When they asked him, when Jesus said to them, like, this temple shall not stand, no rock shall be, no rock shall stand upon another. And they asked him, when shall these things be? And when is the sign of the end of the age and the sign of you coming to your kingdom? No, the sign of your coming. And I was like, the logic behind that, like, back to my script writing, mentality, that if I look at the logic of everything that happened before up until this point, the disciples were never aware of him really dying and resurrecting him back, even though he told them. It was like they were still blinded, and this is why they got scared when he got arrested. Because if they knew about it, like maybe how John kind of remembered, because only John stood by his side, they would have basically said, you know what, this is gonna happen, and he's gonna come back, and he's supposed to ascend. They had no knowledge of that. So when they asked him, when is the sign of your coming, I referred that back to that Daniel prophecy that the Messiah was supposed to come and claim the kingdom for himself, and this is when we will go into the Messianic age. So when you read Matthew 24, that's what you're gonna get. You're not gonna get nothing about. You see Matthew 24. It doesn't talk about nothing about the resurrection of the dead. There's no mention of that. If Matthew 24 was talking about a second coming, of course they would have mentioned that. That's a big thing right there. Matthew 24 is solely for the judgment upon Israel, because as you can see from previous verses, previous chapters, he mentioned to them, I long to gather you under my wings, you that kill the prophets and anybody that sent to you. And you should not see me anymore until you say, blessed is he that coming in the name of the Lord. So Matthew 24 is solely about the judgment upon Israel. And when you look at Revelations now, how it begins is that, it's written to John, and he's on the island of Patmos. And if you look on the map where Patmos is at, it's right off the coast near the 7 churches. So what this seems like is that, God wants to get a message, through his servant John, to get to the closest churches available off the coast, because something big is about to happen. Something big. And we got to remember, as Christians, regardless, how we feel today, Jesus was a Jew and he loved his people. This is why when basically he went to Jerusalem on his last year, he started crying because he foresaw what was going to happen to them because of what they were about to do to him. And this is why when he's walking with the cross and the women are crying, he was like, don't cry for me, but cry for your generations. Because he knew what was about to happen to this people. So Matthew 24 is like a real historical and, significant, especially to Christ himself, that, this is his, the final judgment upon the Israel as we know it. And we know that the Israel that would never be again, because there is no temple, and you cannot basically have a law of Moses if there is no temple. So we now are in the Messianic age. Mm-hmm. So that's my take on Revelations up until a certain point. That's why I'm a partial preterist, because when you read Revelation, the language of Revelations, there's also a mention of, a beast coming up out of the sea, and it appears as a bear, a leopard, and it has mm-hmm. You're familiar with that verse right mm-hmm. there, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we know from Daniel that beast represents nations. So here you have Revelations 12. You have this new, like a new world order popping up out of the sea of all nations combined. You know what I'm saying? So that's where my futurist views start to come in from Revelation 12 onwards. And like I said, when it comes to futurist views, to me, when it comes to prophecy, I will never basically hold a strong take on future prophecy, meaning that this is what it means, because we never know what the future holds. But prophecy is meant to be understood when it happens. And this is why the Jews missed the Messiah, because they had their own preconceptions of who he should be, that he should be this warrior God, this warrior king coming to slay the Romans. You know what I'm saying? So that's my take on Revelations up to a certain point. And like I said, that would take like another show and all that stuff to go
That's
through.
what I want to do. Now, I'm not gonna make a strong point, but you did bring up Daniel.
Mhm.
I'm gonna shoot you a few verses, and I'm gonna let you kind of chew on. I'll tell you what I see here as some issues, but you can chew on them, and then we actually will close down because I have on the screen, or I should have on the screen. Yeah, y'all should be able to see Matthew 24:15. Y'all see that?
Yeah.
All right, yeah, okay. Matthew 24:15, it says, when ye therefore, and this is a continuation, when you therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand. And so he's continuing his talk, what seems to be about what the last times are going to be like, but he refers to Daniel.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, here is what, and again, this is not something I'm admitting. I'm not the most knowledgeable on this stuff, but there appears to be an issue here because when I go to Daniel, I'm going to share this tab, but I got to make it bigger. Give me 1 second. I might make it a little bit bigger. Okay. All right. Y'all should be seeing Daniel 12 and verse 1, where Daniel is talking about something that's going to happen in the end times. Y'all see that?
Yep.
Okay. It says, and at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince, which standeth before the children of thy people, and there shall be a time of trouble. If you read up in Matthew, we know he speaks of a tribulation. So Jesus seems to be referring back to what Daniel said and letting them know this is the stuff that Daniel talked about. This is what's going to be happening at that time. And then he says, such as never was since there was a nation, even unto the same. This is where I have the issue, though.
Mm-hmm.
He says, and at that time thy people shall be delivered, everyone that shall be found written in the book. Now, I'm not aware of let me keep reading. And many of them that sleep, because this is all connected, verse 2, in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, some to shame and everlasting contempt. So Daniel speaks of a sort of resurrection. Now, if this prophecy is what Jesus was referring to that we read back here, where was I? Oh, I got so many tabs, man. Give me a second. Where was it? Was it Matthew over here? Dang. Okay, yeah. Here you go, right here. Jesus says over here, when ye therefore shall see the abomination of the desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place. All right. Jesus seems to say, when this all happens, though, the people of Daniel, the Jews, are going to be delivered. I'm wondering when did that happen? Because what actually happens now, these writers from my studies, they're writing they're writing after AD 70. But let's just say I grant that he's, this was a true prophecy. Even if I grant that, when AD 70 rolls around and the destruction happens and things are falling apart, and from what they can tell, this is being fulfilled, but we don't see the deliverance of the Jews, like Daniel said.
Very good points, man, and I'm glad you brought it up too, because when you look at when Jesus said, "Whoso readeth, let him understand." So the chapter you went to is not the chapter Jesus is referring to here, because he's speaking about the abomination of desolation, which is, I think, was in out of chapter 7, chapter 8. I don't have it off my head right now, but basically it was referring to when, there was a historical time between the Babylonian exile and the Roman occupation, where when the Greece was over the world, and it was split into 4 kingdoms: north, south, east, and west. Um, one of the rulers, Antiochus, and forgive me because I'm from the islands. If I
Mhm.
mess up his name, Antiochus Epiphanes, or I probably pronounced it wrong, but I think some scholars know what I'm talking about. Like what happened was he had went into the temple and he sacrificed a boar, so it was said in especially in the Maccabees, and that defiled the temple, and that was basically the abomination. And after that abomination followed desolation, because after he did that, you know, they couldn't sacrifice no more in the temple. He was killing Jews, he was burning their scrolls. So what Jesus is saying that something similar like this is going to happen. Then that there's going to be someone that's going to come defile the temple, and then after that, the desolation is going to come. And number two, to your point, was where you have where do you see the Jews not being delivered? Because Jesus wasn't talking about Daniel chapter 12. Because if you look at Luke 21 verse 23, which is the same Olivet discourse, he says, "There shall be great distress in the land and wrath upon this people." So what Jesus is talking about 24, he ain't talking about no deliverance. He's talking about wrath upon the people.
Okay.
So the deliverance of Israel is still a future event because, like I said, we're still expecting the resurrection of the dead.
Okay. Well, that I see you have looked into it. What I would like to do with you is I'm gonna get with you offline and let's see if we can schedule a show to go a little bit deeper in this because we just don't have the time. I told y'all that this was a big one. Y'all kind of got to have some longer attention spans and everything for this one to rock out a little bit. But Richie, I do want to thank you for coming on, and we're going to have this happen again as your schedule will permit. Maybe not next week, but we'll be in touch because what I wanted to do next week, like I was saying, I need for some people to understand what I'm trying to do here and build a channel. By the way, if y'all have not gone to the YouTube, y'all can hit the like button. Please, if you're watching and hit that subscribe button so that we can get that channel built up because this channel needs to be a channel of information for those who are seeking, and we'll have some fun on here too. So with that being said, I'm gonna say, Richie, man, I really appreciate you coming on. You made the show, bro, and I hope all your endeavors are going well. And I'll get with you offline. Is that good?
Definitely, brother. And I appreciate you having me on the show again, man. Like I said, you're a decent host. You're a real good host. And hope
I
some people
appreciate.
learn from you as well.
Hey man, it do get hot over here. I'm telling you now. I'm not always as nice, but you respectful. So hey, it's all good. But some
Yeah,
people
continue to be
come
the
for
host.
me.
You could get some mean people on the show. You be the good host.
And some people come for me, and I have to reveal myself. But
Yeah.
hey man, I appreciate it, and we gonna rock out. For those of y'all that are in the chat, thank y'all for coming on. Y'all know how we do. We gonna close out with Chief Kali and his song here. So let me get that up so I can present. And we'll be back next week, everybody, because we are out for the night. Love y'all. Peace.
You can see God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything I'm reflected in. You can see God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything I'm reflected in. You can see God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything I'm reflected in. You can see God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything I'm reflected in. Their eyes to see the world they know outside. I can close my eyes and see all that and way beyond. When these trials of life come heavy and these obstacles get hard, feeling like I need some answers, I just go and talk to God. I just go and talk to God when I'm looking for guidance. Need more than sight, need vision, need direction when I'm blinded. Then I start that conversation with that voice I hear inside me. And that conversation starts with a voice inside that sounds just like me when I talk to God. You can see God in anything, your reflection. I can find God in anything. When I talk to God, you can see God in anything. When I talk talk to God, find God in anything. When I talk to God, my daddy said don't never assume, ask questions. It's ironic it was that advice that helped the song happen. It was also that advice that led me to my life's blessings. That same advice helped me make it through life's lessons. It was that advice that separates grown-ups away from children. That advice can be the difference from knowing or just believing. It was that advice that brought the gavel down on my decisions of breaking the mental chains of these man-created religions. The faith and belief, nonsense, the biggest scam ever. I hate to say it, I swear it's one hell of a mental illness. Why we do it with these religions? The fact that COVID's killing while all of these guys is missing. Peekaboos, guys playing games with you. I'ma just assume he ain't got no COVID miracles. Maybe he ran out after making the donkey talk. Or some stories about a guy walking on water tides. Simply a distraction to keep you away from you. And to look outside for a guy when the God is inside of you. When you close your eyes at night to pray to that voice you talking to. When you ready to face the truth, you realize that voice is you. You can see God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything I'm reflecting in. You can see God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything I'm reflecting in. You can see God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything I'm reflecting in. You can see God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything I'm reflecting in.